Today on Notsam Wrestling, Dominik Mysterio is a double champ. Wrestlemania goes to Saudi Arabia. Brock Lesnar splits his pants. Andrade is out of WWE, and that's only the beginning of it all. This is Notsam Wrestling. Welcome to Notsam Wrestling. And yes, I mean, I've laid out this amazing storyline in my head for where Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton could go. That was a Notsam Wrestling update. I've laid out what I think should be the last 7 appearances for John Cena in his career, including a War Games match. That was a Notsam Wrestling update, and still, the hits keep coming. If I told you there was going to be an emergency podcast every day, like if I just made a note, even though you shouldn't know in advance that there's going to be an emergency podcast, odds are there's going to be an emergency podcast, because I feel like I'm 2 to 3 emergency podcasts behind, but that should make today's Notsam Wrestling show a heavy, heavy hitter. So thank you for being here with me. And maybe all of this is just because I'm in a great mood, because Dominik Mysterio is a double campeon. Dominik Mysterio goes to Worlds Collide and wins the AAA Mega Championship. Now, I had talked about after Triple Mania that I just didn't understand, and I was at this point where, like, after seeing Trick Williams retain the TNA Championship and Mike Santana not win, after seeing Joe Hendry not win the TNA Championship the first time he went for it, then after seeing Dominik Mysterio go to Triple Mania and not win the Mega Championship, I was just sitting there going, like, how can these moments just slip right between our fingertips? And lo and behold, we get to Worlds Collide Friday night after Smackdown. Another fabulous show. I really enjoyed it. They're just such fun shows, and the crowd is so into it, and everybody's just having a great time. And it feels like the wrestlers are especially the WWE ones, it feels like, you know, on 2 levels. It feels like the AAA guys are realizing that, like, okay, at least right now, there's a heightened level of attention being paid to what we're doing. But with that is a reverence for what we're doing. There's not this heightened level of attention that's being paid to it in a way that it's like, no, what if you change this? What if you change that? No, it's just like, we're now paying attention. We're going to put it on a pedestal. And then for WWE guys and girls, it feels like there's this moment to kind of get to do new things, to get in front of an audience that expects new things, to have different types of matches, to show different sides of yourself. For Natalya to bring this Natty character to a WWE produced show. It's not on Raw or SmackDown yet, but it's on this AAA show, and it's resonating. It's resonating with the fans. She becomes the #1 contender last night. For Finn Balor to get to take out this Demonito puppet. And I swear, I thought that the guy had a kid, and I hadn't found out about it when I look at his Instagram, and he's flying home with what I think is a baby in his arms. But it's this little demon puppet in his arms, because Demonito had a hell of an evening trying to keep up with Layeska. And I don't mean the Layeska that was sitting on Logan Paul's arm drinking Prime. I mean the legit Layeska, which, by the way, now both puppets are on WWE Shop, okay? So everybody is winning here. But we get to that main event. And, you know, before the main event had started, we saw the promo, right? And it was a double-edged sword type of promo, where first we see Dominik Mysterio and Rey Mysterio agrees that if Dominik is able to win the championship, that yes, he will come out and raise his arm. And Dominik says, no. You'll do a lot more than that. You're going to put that title around my waist. You're going to put the AAA Mega Championship, the championship that you never won. You're going to put that championship around my waist, sucker. He didn't say sucker, but it was a very sucker type of vibe. And Ray said, okay. And as they're walking off, here comes Finn Balor. And Finn Balor says, Dominik, the one thing that you can do is win this on your own. Good luck out there, champ. I can't wait to see it. And you go, that's interesting. And at first I go, maybe this is a way of making Dominik look like more of a babyface, that he actually wins this thing and he actually does win it on his own. Then Judgment Day has to come in and try to take credit for it, but the reality is they didn't do anything. However, I was being naive. Dominik Mysterio comes to the ring. Shh. He's wearing gear that was inspired by Rey Mysterio at WrestleMania 21, which I believe it might have been the last Rey and Eddie match, maybe, but it was inspired by Rey's gear. Shh. He was a deadbeat. We don't like Rey. He might have inspired Dom's gear. But he gets out there, and they're having this match. It's Dominik Mysterio versus Vikingo. And I mean, a year ago, this would have been unheard of. I think when they made this announcement at WrestleMania, which caught a lot of us totally off guard when WWE announced owning an interest stake in AAA, that it was like, what's this going to look like? And there were, of course, a lot of fans that were worried that it was like, okay, you're just going to come in and WWEify this promotion that is one of the oldest lucha promotions in all of Mexico. And instead, we're getting some really fun stuff. And we're getting something like Vikingo versus Dominik Mysterio. We're already at a place, because this year has been moving so fast, that we take for granted that of course we would see something like this. But there is no of course we would see something like this. A year ago, Vikingo was like, there's no way you would see Vikingo in a WWE match. And if Vikingo ever did come to WWE, they wouldn't know what to do with him. That's what, the smarter wrestling fans would tell you. And now, who could have seen this coming? On the WWE's YouTube channel, you're watching a AAA pay-per-view that's headlined by Dominik versus Vikingo, and the crowd is fully on Dominik Mysterio's side. Everybody in that crowd is cheering for Dominik Mysterio and not for Vikingo. And they're booing Vikingo for other reasons. But they're only I think they're booing Vikingo because they didn't like how he became the AAA champion. But it's not like they're cheering Dominik Mysterio because they're booing Vikingo. They're both booing Vikingo and they're cheering Dominik Mysterio, which I believe that they're doing independently. Regardless of any statements that the Judgment Day made before the match, Dominik Mysterio was not actually tasked to win this match alone, as Finn Balor and JD McDonough come out and we start getting the false finishes at that point. That's the Act 3 of our championship match, when Finn Balor distracts the referee and JD McDonough headbutts Vikingo with that hat size 11 head, and Vikingo goes down 1-2. It's not enough. Vikingo kicks out, and that's when here comes Dragon Lee to try to stop it. But Dragon Lee's a 2-on-1 situation. Rey Mysterio comes out, and Rey Mysterio helps Dragon Lee fight off the Judgment Day. But JBL is great on the call, where it's like, say whatever you want. Rey Mysterio is now fighting against his son. I don't think Rey Mysterio comes across overly great fighting against Dominik Mysterio in that case. But, that's a conversation for a different time. So now it's back to one-on-one. Boom, boom, boom. Rey Mysterio puts the mask on, the Rey Mysterio senior mask that he's been wearing. And here comes Grande Americano. Grande Americano is now getting involved. We still don't know what the full connection is between Dominik Mysterio and Grande Americano. But Grande Americano is able to slide Dominik Mysterio that plate to slide into his mask. But the plate doesn't work at first. Vikingo drop kicks Dominik, and the plate hits Dominik right in his head. Grande pulls the referee out of the ring when the referee's about to count 3 because Vikingo hits his finish. Grande drops an elbow for good measure on the referee. Here comes Dominik now taking advantage. Frog splash. There's no referee. Another referee comes out. 1-2. Kick out. The audience can't believe it. Now, a key here is that as Dominik Mysterio is employing all of these heel tactics, the cheating, the foreign objects, whether it's the Judgment Day, whether it's Grande Americano, I mean, foreign objects and cheating to the point where it's absurd. It's just like more and more and more and more. The fans just start cheering more and more and more and more. And you almost get to a point where it's like, the rules of who's a heel and who's a babyface really is only determined by the audience. Because if you just take, historically, these are the things, if you do these things, that means you're a heel. Those are the exact things that Dominik Mysterio did. And not at one point did the crowd go, oh, we don't like Dominik Mysterio. And in the end, Dominik Mysterio is finally able to get that plate back into his mask. 1, 2, 3. Dominik Mysterio wins the AAA Mega Championship. The AAA Championship that Rey Mysterio never won in his career. And the crowd is going nuts for it. The crowd loves that Dominik Mysterio is now the mega champion. And Vikingo gets out of there, and here comes Rey Mysterio. And Rey Mysterio, okay, he acknowledges it. Dominik says, no, put the title around my waist. And he shoves Rey. And he crunches up his shirt, and he does, he's bullying. He's bullying his own dad. And Rey puts the title around Dominik's waist, much to his chagrin. And here comes the Judgment Day, and they celebrate with Dominik, and Dominik holds that title. So, a couple of things here. Number one, I think that you are setting up for a scenario where once Rey Mysterio is back and once Rey Mysterio is better, Rey Mysterio versus Dominik Mysterio is something that you could easily do for the AAA Mega Championship. It's almost like a match that big, do you save it for Triple Mania, or would you even do a Rey versus Dom for the AAA Mega Championship on a WWE pay-per-view? Because I'll tell you right now, Dominik coming out with both titles, the IC title and the AAA title, is only going to bring more eyes, not only to what Dominik's doing, but to bring eyes on the AAA product, which, lucky for WWE, is just on the YouTube channel. So the minute you're watching Raw and you see Dom with the two belts and everybody's talking about this mega championship match, all you have to do is a couple of clicks and you can watch the match for yourself, and maybe it makes you a AAA fan. It's pretty smart. But the one thing, or, it's probably not going to be a Triple Mania because that's going to take a year to pay off. And I don't think we're going to wait a year, depending on when Rey gets back, to tell you the truth. But based on where we're at, if they were to do another Rey Mysterio versus Dominik Mysterio match, especially in a AAA ring, is Rey getting cheered? Is Dominik getting booed? I'm not so sure about that anymore. As a matter of fact, I'm watching this, and as I was watching the match, I go, look, you got to turn Dominik Mysterio babyface. And I've been saying that for a long time, and I don't think that that's groundbreaking analysis. I think anybody that watches wrestling knows, okay, Dominik Mysterio turning babyface is the way to go. But I don't think you change a thing about Dominik Mysterio. I think, and this is very Eddie Guerrero, honestly, of Dominik Mysterio. I think all the interference, all the tricks, all the tactics, all of that stays. And you just change his opponents, and boom, you've got a babyface. You almost have a babyface now as wrestling babyfaces. Like, it's getting to the point where if the American audience follows the AAA audience, their lead, and they might, especially after what we saw at WrestleMania and what's been brewing all year. Dominik got massive cheers. He did like a interview during the commercial break of Netflix in the arena, and he just got massive cheers. If these cheers continue and they carry over to Raw and they carry over to WWE PLEs, it's going to kill babyfaces because they're going to be cheering for Dominik Mysterio instead of the babyfaces, and the babyfaces are going to look bad. You're at the point where you kind of got to do it. Liv Morgan was part of this big announcement event about WrestleMania 43 over the weekend, which we'll get into in a moment. But, I'm sitting there going like, if Liv is even close to back, you got to bring Liv back. And you got to set Liv and Dominik up together as a babyface couple. And honestly, I'm looking at where Grande Americano fits into this whole thing. And there's one version where there's a big swerve and Grande Americano comes in and he betrays Dominik Mysterio when he least expects it. And then Grande Americano switches his mask to purple and black and he becomes, a Judgment Day Grande Americano. But honestly, the audience is cheering for Grande Americano. The AAA audience is cheering for Grande Americano. They love him. Even if the original idea was to have this character be kind of a troll character, they love Grande Americano in AAA. And maybe it's because he's associated with Dom and they love Dom, but regardless, I think that when the Judgment Day split happens, you've got Finn Balor, JD McDonough, Raquel Rodriguez, and Roxanne Perez on one side. And on the other side, you're looking at Liv Morgan, Dominik Mysterio, and Grande Americano. I think the idea of Grande and Dominik just being on the same side and Dominik Mysterio calling himself the king of the luchadors and Grande Americano going, yeah, he is the king of the luchadors. Both of these characters, even if they were designed to be heels, even if they were over the top, ironic, almost like comedy type characters, are now so popular. And their matches are so good and they're so believable in the spots that they're in that none of it matters, right? You've got two big time baby faces here. And for me, like, that's what you do. That's the first step, is to have them turn babyface together. You know what I mean? Like, what happens when, like, okay, you take Grande Americano out of the picture, right? And the Judgment Day turns on Dominik Mysterio and they turn on Liv Morgan. So Dominik and Liv are the baby faces, right? And they're getting the numbers advantage. They're getting the numbers advantage. And then one day, Grande Americano comes in and saves the day. Instantly, Grande's a baby face. And I think it'll work. And you've then got Grande and Dominik on the same side. All you got to do, you've now got to tone down, like, Penta, who talks about how much he hates Dominik Mysterio. Ray, who talks about how much he hates Dominik Mysterio. Like, those are the guys that you've got to sit there and be like, listen, listen, everybody's going to cheer for Rey Mysterio always. He's that guy. I think everybody's going to cheer for Penta always. He's that guy. But I think just to make sure that everybody's on the same page and everybody's looking as good as possible, it's almost like, hey, Penta, man, easy on Dominik. Because this audience is going to go towards Dominik, I think. Regardless, however it ends up working itself out, Dominik Mysterio, Dirty Dom is a double champ. That's more of an alliteration than Dominik Mysterio is the double champion. Dirty Dom is a double champ. And I couldn't be more thrilled. The other big news in terms of WWE storyline to come out of that AAA show, Worlds Collide, was the Wyatts attack on Pagano and Psycho Clown. So Xavier Woods, the match was the New Day versus Pagano and Psycho Clown for the AAA Tag Team Championship. And Xavier Woods had, I don't know, the day before the show, maybe, posted an Instagram that he had this, like, big thing taken out of the back of his head. I don't know. I mean, it looked disgusting. But he still made it to the show. However, he was on the outside of the ring, and it was Big G, Grayson Waller, who was teaming with Kofi Kingston in a match where they put over that that Woods and Kofi may have also had some clown phobias that they were dealing with in their match against Pagano and Psycho Clown. So it's a great match. It's a lot of fun. And in the end, Psycho Clown does the great spot where he rips his mask and he shows his face under it. It scares Xavier Woods. Xavier Woods runs to the back. Big G and Kofi are the victims of double Mexican destroyers, which is going to be great because going forward onto Monday Night Raw, their quest to ban the Mexican destroyer from wrestling gets even heavier. But Pagano and Psycho Clown are able to get the victory. 1, 2, 3. Pagano and Psycho Clown retain the AAA Tag Team Championship. Then they're in the ring. They get asked, on a night as special as tonight, how does it feel to retain the Tag Team Championship? And before they can even speak on that, the lights go out and the Wyatt noise hits. Boom, boom. And I'm like, no way. In a million years, I didn't see it coming. And that Wyatt music starts to hit. Boom, 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 ba-dum, ba-dum. If I wasn't running out of breath, I would have kept going. And the Fireflies start to come out, and you see the Wyatt show up at AAA, at Worlds Collide. And all of a sudden, like, you realize you would never have seen it like that, but the Wyatts in this over-the-top world where we've got Mr. Iguana, and we've got Psycho Clown, and we've got Pagano, and we got Psychosis, and previously we had wrestlers like Psychosis. Still, we have La Parka. You go, yeah, the Wyatt Six do kind of make sense here. And the Wyatt Six come to the ring, and they go to town on the clowns. They completely take out Psycho Clown. They completely take out Pagano. They put them through tables. They go all over the place. And, like, by the way, Psycho Clown and Pagano are, like, extreme wrestlers, especially Pagano. Like, his specialty is that he's a hardcore wrestler. So pulling out the tables and doing all this stuff, I'm sure it was very intentional. And at the end of the beatdown, the visual that you get is the Wyatts holding the AAA Tag Team Championship up. And you go, this is it? Like, I cannot wait. I cannot wait to see what this looks like. I cannot wait to see a rivalry between Psycho Clown and Pagano versus the Wyatt Six. Again, this is the type of thing when I was talking about, like, Dominik and Ray, they could have a mega championship rivalry that extends also to the main roster. This is something that You could potentially see, you could see it at Crown Jewel in Perth. You could see it at Survivor Series, whatever. Like, that's a match that's big enough, a AAA match that's big enough that it would have a spot on WWE television. And I think, imagine like the Wyatt Six, because the Wyatt Six were also just on SmackDown 2 hours before they did a run-in in Vegas. They had a pre-tape, which obviously was pre-taped quite a while in advance, but pre-tape on SmackDown where they were talking about the Street Profits. Now imagine you have a situation where the Street Profits that are obviously on their way to breaking up, I would think. But you could easily do a thing where it's like the Wyatt Six beat the Street Profits again on SmackDown. Do an angle where the Street Profits break up, and as the Wyatt Six are like feeling good about themselves, imagine Pagano and Psycho Clown showing up on SmackDown to repay the favor. Like, Pagano and Psycho Clown is an act that could conceivably actually be a team that plays the Wyatt Six's own game, that beats them down, that is equally as nuts as that group is. So I just think that there's so much potential there. I cannot wait for that rivalry. Interesting news that broke just over the weekend, kind of out of nowhere, is that apparently Andrade is no longer a part of the WWE. So we last saw Andrade, and I guess I hadn't thought about the fact that we haven't really seen him in a month. It certainly explains why Rey Fenix was back in singles competition, because Rey Fenix and Sami Zayn had an incredible match on SmackDown. Sami Zayn doing exactly what I hoped was going to happen, doing the Sami Zayn Open Challenge, following John Cena's lead. It's not about being an underdog anymore. I think this is going to take Sami in the exact direction that I think he should be in. I think it's going to be a very, very good thing for Sami Zayn. But we did see Rey Fenix in this singles match, and coming right off of that, and in hindsight, it was like, yeah, there was a lot of energy being put into the Rey Fenix Andrade tag team, to the point where if you go back a month and listen to this show, I was predicting for / hoping for Rey Fenix and Andrade to win the TLC match at SummerSlam. I wanted them to become the SmackDown Tag Team Champions. I thought they were breathing new life into the tag division, and I liked the story of their team, which is like, we were never necessarily meant to be a team. We weren't built to be this team, but we find ourselves in this tag team match, and we have this insane chemistry that we never knew that we had. And just the idea of two people who have similar styles, that come from similar worlds, realizing that they have amazing chemistry together, they complement each other, and you watch this team build and start good but get better and better with every match and build momentum because they're a brand new team. I think that that's a really fun story for a tag team. And I was into it. I was really liking what was going on. But then we didn't see anything after the TLC match between the two of them. And I start looking at the internet, and it says that some of the wrestling reporters are reporting that Andrade has quietly left the WWE. And then I look at WWE.com, and I see that Andrade is in the alumni section. When you go to the superstars section at the WWE website, Andrade is no longer on the active roster section. He's on the alumni section. And you wonder why. I mean, I have no idea. Was he released by WWE? Did he ask for his release from WWE? Like, is this Andrade saying, I think I'm done? Or is this WWE saying, I think we're done? Is this a situation where, who knows, in a little while he could be back? Or is this a situation where he's probably not coming back? And where's he going? Because he left AEW to come here. Is he looking to go back to AEW? I mean, right now, you look at the wrestling landscape, and I guess New Japan, although they do have a relationship with AEW, they're still kind of a fairly self-governing body. So I don't know. Is his idea to go to New Japan? Is his idea to go back to AEW? I mean, AAA and TNA are both in partnership with WWE. So if he wanted to go to either AAA or TNA, you'd think he would just ask WWE, hey, send me to AAA or TNA. I mean, CMLL is now in pretty deep partnership with AEW. So I don't know where Andrade is going to go. Is he going to keep wrestling? Is he done for a while? Is there an injury that we don't know about? Who knows? It's very sudden. I was going to say startling, but I don't know if startling is the right word. It's just very sudden. It's kind of out of nowhere. I wouldn't have predicted that, certainly. And, I think Andrade is one of those conversations where it's like he always has had, wherever he's gone, whenever he's gone there, has had so much potential. But I don't think it's ever quite been realized, except for maybe NXT. And maybe that's where a lot of the potential comes from. Of course, in Mexico as well. But I think, and it's interesting because early Andrade in NXT, it wasn't until he really became that full-on Andrade Cien Almas, which really was Andrade El Idolo, but until he became the Andrade that we see now, because originally Andrade was not that guy. He was just kind of a baby face that was looking to figure out exactly who he was. And it was once he became this character, this version of Andrade, that I think people were like, wow, and it brought him all the way to the NXT championship. He was a world champion in NXT, and a lot of people were on the Andrade bandwagon and going, yeah, this guy's gonna be it, and it seemed like he was, and then he wasn't on the main roster anymore, and then he went to AEW, and it was like a big signing for AEW. It was like, yeah, Andrade, that's a perfect signing for AEW, but it never really kind of happened, and then he left AEW, and then came back to WWE, and it looked like it was like, okay, this could be cool. And he has good matches. Don't get me wrong. He had great matches, but it never really got to, okay, he's the guy. And then it started to kind of be like, okay, here's something when he formed this tag team with Rey Fenix. But then that was kind of it. And the fact that it ends where it ends is, it's peculiar to me, the whole thing. I'm sure that there's more to the story, and maybe we'll find out, and maybe we won't find out about, what exactly went on. But needless to say, it is what it is at this moment. So we'll see. We'll see where Andrade ends next, or lands, I should say, next, if anywhere. But, I still think that he's a guy with a ton of potential. I still think that he's a guy that can, when he was in NXT as world champion, there was nothing about him that didn't scream world champion. There was nothing about him that didn't make it seem like, man, when he gets to the main roster, it's going to be something. And while that hasn't been executed upon in WWE or AEW, he also hasn't lost that. There is a superstar quality to him. There is something there. So I'm still very optimistic that at some point, something is going to kind of release that, but we'll see when it happens. But very, very interesting, very, very surprising to me as well. We had the advertised return. I guess it wasn't really a return because Brock Lesnar was on Smackdown last week. He did the run-in on the John Cena match. But we had the advertised appearance, I should say, of Brock Lesnar to start SmackDown. And Brock Lesnar, man, he still has that aura. He still has that. It's just everything. He's just totally different. He's Brock. There's nothing about Brock that makes you wonder why he's in the spot that he's in. He's just Brock. So he gets in the ring and starts to get ready to cut a promo. He's got his cowboy hat, the feather in the corner. And then R-Truth's music plays. And R-Truth comes out and he does the whole R-Truth song. People over there, what's up? If you see me, stand up and say what's up. Except instead of now, he changed one of the lyrics. I believe the original lyrics said something to the effect of one of the baddest young brothers. And now I believe it said one of the baddest OGs, which I like because it's reflective of where he's at in the world of wrestling right now. But very, very interesting. To see him he was floating between being more serious and being old R-Truth. It's still kind of hard to pinpoint exactly who this guy is since introducing us to Ron Killings, I'm Driving Now. And maybe, John Cena turning babyface was enough to trip a wire in his head to then go, well, everything's fine. I don't need to be angry anymore. I don't know. But R-Truth comes out and has this confrontation with Brock Lesnar. And of course, it's very exciting because, and we talked about it when R-Truth was first, it was announced that he was not coming back to the WWE before he then came back to WWE. We talked about when R-Truth actually broke Brock Lesnar, when R-Truth made Brock Lesnar laugh by coming to the ring and doing that promo where in character he thought that Paul Heyman was announcing himself for the Royal Rumble, and when he realized that it was Brock Lesnar, not Paul Heyman, that had announced himself as being in the Rumble, that then he announced that he was not in the Rumble anymore. So now we have R-Truth and Brock Lesnar face-to-face in the ring. And R-Truth said he wasn't scared of Brock Lesnar anymore, and I used to be scared of you. I'm not scared of you anymore, and John Cena's going to take you out. Brock Lesnar's asking, where is John Cena? R-Truth says, well, I don't know where John Cena is. But R-Truth introduced himself multiple times as John Cena's brother. He said, that's my childhood hero and my big brother, which the big brother thing is a new wrinkle. He had kind of said, like, that's my childhood hero. We're like, but now he's saying straight up, that's my big brother. Brock Lesnar even at one point said brothers from different mothers. And he said, well, no, we have the same father, which John Cena Sr. is a fixture in the history of Massachusetts, New England independent wrestling. So I had no idea that John Cena Sr. was also the father of R-Truth, a.k.a. Ron Cena, as he introduced himself. So Brock made him clarify a couple of times, So you are John Cena's brother. Yes. Younger brother. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Brock even asked at one point how old he was. Look, the thing is here, this is a very entertaining segment. We got no clarification whatsoever on why Brock Lesnar is back, on why Brock Lesnar has picked this fight with John Cena, on why Brock Lesnar returned at SummerSlam to F5 John Cena. We still don't really know why. And I do hope that we find out why. I'm fine that we didn't find out on SmackDown because I enjoyed the segment with R-Truth. But before we get to WrestlePalooza, I would like some kind of clarification from Brock as to why he just decided out of the blue to F5 John Cena. And, the commentary was saying, Vic Joseph and Booker T did a great job on SmackDown. I think they were implying that Brock Lesnar wanted to end John Cena's farewell tour early, which, okay, if that's what we're going with, that works for me. That's fine. Now tell me, why? Why does Brock Lesnar want to end John Cena's streak early? We saw the video package air on SmackDown that explained, how they were interconnected. I thought that was really well done because I don't think that people definitely talk about the history that John Cena and Brock Lesnar have, but I don't think they look at the parallels in the way they came up. I don't think they look at the fact that, they both trained in the same OVW class. I don't think they look at the fact that maybe John Cena took some time to figure out who he was, and that at one point John Cena was on the chopping block, and that R-Truth was John Cena's brother, and that Brock Lesnar was just propelled to greatness immediately, was put right into the main event. I mean, really, when you think about it, John Cena finally was over as a babyface right around WrestleMania 20. John Cena beating Big Show at WrestleMania 20 in that United States Championship match to open the show was John Cena first being like, okay, I made it. I'm onto something. I'm somebody. And they're cheering for me in the Garden and they love me. This is it. That really was. A year later, he would get his first championship win at WrestleMania 21 against JBL, his first WWE championship win at WrestleMania 21 against JBL. But winning that U.S. championship match at WrestleMania 20 against Big Show was like that first sort of, okay, John, for lack of a better term, and I wish I didn't have to say this, we see you. And it was a big deal. At the same time, on that same pay-per-view, WrestleMania 20, Brock Lesnar had the Goldberg match, and it was Brock's last match of his first run. Brock had already accomplished everything he was going to accomplish in his first run. It took John Cena Brock Lesnar's entire first run to finally get to the place where he was that babyface. You know, I mean, think about it. WrestleMania 19, Brock Lesnar is main eventing with Kurt Angle. And John Cena is on the pre-show battle rapping cardboard cutouts of Fabulous and Jay-Z. So I never really, the fact that they were in the same class and came up around the same time, I never really correlated those two things. For me, it's almost like the John Cena Brock Lesnar thing starts with Brock Lesnar returning the night after John Cena loses to Rock, and then goes forward into the SummerSlam after WrestleMania 30 and Brock Lesnar killing John Cena in Los Angeles and all that. But that's all to say, we didn't get any clarification on what Brock Lesnar's intentions are, but what we did get was Brock F5ing R-Truth because R-Truth insisted he was John Cena's brother. We never found out where John Cena was, but R-Truth got F5'd and R-Truth gets laid out in the ring. And when that happens, Brock jumps up, grabs the back of his pants, checks the seat, tries to play it off for a moment, then I think realizes it and starts to kind of smirk and goes, Stu, I just split my pants. Talking to Stu the cameraman and saying, I just split my pants. I don't care. Then he turns around and shows everybody blue. He says the blue underwear is what he says. He was wearing his Smackdown blue underpants because it was his big, Smackdown promo. And then he kind of starts like shaking his derriere for the audience. He starts to almost do a Brock Lesnar version of twerking, which I don't think anybody saw coming. Now, hindsight being 2020, I would have loved it if Brock Lesnar had decided in that moment, well, if Brock Lesnar, the character, splits his pants, how would Brock Lesnar, the character, feel? And if he decided he was furious and just decided to beat up anybody he saw, like R-Truth gets another 3 F5s, everybody around him gets beaten within a second of their life because Brock Lesnar is so mad about splitting his pants. Like, if you weren't afraid of Brock Lesnar enough, when something as silly as splitting your pants happens, Brock Lesnar just goes absolutely ballistic and destroys everybody, I think that would have been a lot of fun. But it was still also a lot of fun to see Brock Lesnar getting enjoyment out of the fact that he split his pants. It was almost like I'm sure this would happen to anybody. You go back to being almost like a little kid in school when you realize, oh no, I split my pants in front of everybody. But then I'll bet this is what it looked like just on the face. Just the fact that Brock was smiling. It was almost like Brock Lesnar goes back to being a little kid, except instead of being in front of his whole classroom, he's in front of 15,000 people wherever they are for SmackDown. And he goes, oh no, I split my pants in front of everybody. And then he remembers, wait a minute, I'm Brock Lesnar. I can split my pants in front of everybody. There's literally nothing that I can't do in front of everybody, because if anybody thinks it's embarrassing, I'll destroy them. I don't have to fear public humiliation at all. I'm Brock Lesnar. And that's the point at which Brock Lesnar starts laughing and goes, I'm splitting my pants. Because guess what? If Stu the cameraman splits his pants, he would have to get embarrassed. If somebody in the audience splits their pants, they would have to get embarrassed. If Brock Lesnar splits his pants, he doesn't have to be embarrassed. Because are you going to go to Brock Lesnar and say, hey, you look silly? No. You want to get out of there alive. And it's almost like Brock Lesnar has this moment of realization. Like, oh my God, I've become such a monster in real life that I can split my pants. That's the beauty of being Brock Lesnar. That's the privilege which comes with being Brock Lesnar, that I can split my pants. And that R-Truth is still laying there in the middle of the ring. So I don't know which is scarier. Brock Lesnar flipping out and getting angry because he split his pants, or the fact that Brock Lesnar doesn't get angry after splitting his pants because he realizes he doesn't have to. There's no such thing as public humiliation when you're Brock Lesnar. I don't know. But it was fun to see. We've got another Brock Lesnar promo coming on SmackDown. I think he's advertised for SmackDown next week. I think he is. And then I think John Cena is advertised for Raw this week. So Yeah, because we've only got a week left. Less than a week. We've got a few days left. That's crazy before WrestlePalooza. And All Out. Whew. We'll get right back to it. Sorry, I was just looking at my app, but I guess that's okay because this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Yes, you and I, we make decisions every single day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this season on Prize Picks where it's good to be right. It's easy to play. You pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you're correct, you could win some serious cash. Look, football is fun, but it's a lot funner when you got something riding on the game and you want to make sure that you're right. If you're watching that game knowing I said something, I put it on the app, I was going through all my players and I was picking them, I think I was right. How do you know you were right? It pays off. Cash out on Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more. So getting your money is quick and it's easy. Just like I did, download the app and use code NOTSAM to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code NOTSAM to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Probably should have prepared a pay-per-view preview or something. Maybe we'll do some, we're going to probably have to do some emergency pods, that's for sure. Because we also got the big news this week that it was confirmed that WrestleMania 43 in 2027 is going to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. This announcement came right before Smackdown. So on Friday, you had the announcement that WrestleMania 43 was going to Saudi Arabia. You had the Smackdown show. Then you had AAA When Worlds Collide. So it was a busy Friday. But this wasn't the surprise that it would have been several years ago, and it certainly wasn't the surprise that it would have been a couple of days before, because the news had kind of leaked a day or two before the press conference, because apparently like some kind of press release had gone out in Saudi Arabia and then taken down that said WrestleMania in 2027 was going to come to Saudi. So we didn't have all the details, but we knew that this was at least in the air. And frankly, like, when not only looking at the relationship that WWE has had with Saudi and the way the shows have evolved, like when WWE first started going over there and doing pay-per-views, a lot of the pay-per-views were almost like many of the matches were existing in their own world, whether it was the Greatest Royal Rumble or the Best Wrestler Ever tournament or the Legends matches. Like, you know, Triple H coming out of retirement or Undertaker and Kane coming out of retirement or this happening or that happening. A lot of the matches almost happened in a vacuum that were not an active part of the storylines that were going on week to week on WWE television, but that's all changed in the last couple of years. You're seeing, you know, especially in the last couple of years, everything that happens for the most part on these premium live events that happen in Saudi Arabia are just as much part of the day-to-day story as any other premium live event, to the point where a lot of these shows become, you know, just like other giant international premium live events. You know, whether it's like the King of the Ring going over there and that, like the stuff that happens there now has a direct impact on every other show that you watch on WWE TV, and that wasn't always the case early on in the relationship. Add to that the announcement was already made that next year, which, I mean, literally a few months away, the Royal Rumble's over there. When I saw that and saw, you know, how much these pay-per-views were changing, premium live events were changing and becoming more and more like the ones that we see in every other spot, I was like, okay, it's only a matter of time before WrestleMania gets over there, and WrestleMania is going over there. WrestleMania 43, 2027. So next year, it'll be Las Vegas, and then the year after, it'll be Saudi Arabia. And, you know, I'm happy. You know, we've heard from, one of the things that I love about this podcast is the global reach. And I love hearing from listeners that are fans in and around Saudi Arabia that interact with the podcast and are so excited to see shows over there. I love hearing that and hearing the fan perspective from that part of the world. This throws a monkey wrench into the plans of a lot of fans because this is the first WrestleMania that's been out of the continental North America. It's out of the continental North America. WrestleMania has only ever been held in America and Canada. And not only were there a lot of countries that were like, oh, we could have the first one, we could have the first one, but here in America, it's become such a thing for WrestleMania to become this travel destination because it's happening domestically. So I'm very curious to see what this WrestleMania weekend looks like now that for the first time in what will then be 43 years, it's going to be completely different. There were rumors leading up to it that there could be a second WrestleMania and that this would be one. The fact that they numbered it WrestleMania 43 makes me hopeful that there still only is one WrestleMania a year, which, look, if you do 10 WrestleManias a year, whatever. If they're all good, then we're just watching 10 great shows. But the sort of traditionalist in me likes the idea of the one WrestleMania a year, and they're all numbered. And you know what I mean? If you're still going to number them, but you're going to do them multiple times a year. So I am glad that it looks like that's not the direction that things went in. And we've got a year and a half, right? We've got a year and a half to do it. And I have no doubt that efforts are going to be made to make this a massive WrestleMania for a lot of reasons. But I just have no doubt that everybody involved is going to try to make this noteworthy, newsworthy, and massive. And you look at some of the shows that have happened and what we've gotten on those shows, and I would not be surprised if there is an effort made to spend a lot of money to bring talent back that maybe was never going to come back. You know, I think as time goes on, we're going to be able to start going like, okay, I know Shawn Michaels said he wasn't going to wrestle again, but if you've got over a year to get yourself ready for it, is there a world where you'd come back for WrestleMania? And if there is, who's the match that we want to see? Because I could spend a long time coming up with matches for WrestleMania. If we really do one more Shawn Michaels match, that would probably be the WrestleMania that it would be at just because of the resources that are going into it. Do we see Shawn and AJ? Do we see Shawn and Seth? Is it possible even? And do we want to see it? That's another conversation. You know, is there, because we've been talking about it, and I even put out a Notsam Wrestling update show about it. When we saw The Rock and how seriously he was taking acting, and he had lost the weight, and he has so many projects now lined up one after the other, we said, I guess we've seen the last Rock match. I guess we've seen the last time The Rock is going to be in the ring. But again, between all the resources, between how big this show could potentially be, and between the fact that we've got a year and a half to get everybody's ducks in a row, is there a world where that's the WrestleMania where you see Rock versus Roman Reigns? Is there a world where The Rock wrestles on that WrestleMania? It could happen. And that's a wild thing to think about. Is there a world where this is the WrestleMania where Stone Cold comes back for one more? I mean, WrestleMania 38 was so beautiful, and it was so perfect. And Stone Cold doesn't like to disrupt that type of stuff. But could it? Could it happen? That's a question that we're going to be asking over the next year and a half as this show comes up. Also, what of the sort of larger festivity that is WrestleMania and the travel destination and all the shows that happen around WrestleMania? I would not be surprised, for instance, if SmackDown and Raw also happen in Saudi. They've done SmackDown and Raws in Saudi Arabia. I would not be surprised if that happened here. I think it's going to be a wild experience to be watching WrestleMania in the middle of the day. But I don't know. I've never been against early wrestling shows. Maybe that's because I'm an old man at this point. But at least that's how I feel. But I mean, there are two ways that I think about this, and I've been thinking about it a lot, and that's why I'm glad I didn't put out an emergency podcast. I want to get my thoughts together because it's just a while. There's so many elements and aspects of this. But number one, I think that this could make, especially in 2027 specifically, SummerSlam a bigger deal, because I think that domestic fans are going to be looking for that 2-night, let's all get together, let's do 100 million things, and let's travel for it. And I think SummerSlam could turn into that. Like this year, you had a 2-night SummerSlam, but you had your 4 shows. 2 SummerSlam nights, SmackDown and Raw in the area, and that's what you had. I think that, like, going forward, you can build out on SummerSlam. And I'm sure if they're trying to do 2-night stadium shows, I'm sure that the goal is to build out on SummerSlam the same way that you built out in time on WrestleMania. And so, like, my first thought was, like, okay, if SmackDown and Raw are happening over there, which is a huge possibility, what happens to Stand and Deliver? What happens to doing a AAA show that weekend? Because I would think that now, as successful as these AAA shows have been, that would be a good weekend to do a AAA show. What happens to the Hall of Fame ceremony? What happens to WWE World as a convention? What happens to all the independent shows and WrestleCon that happen on the periphery of WrestleMania? And my first thought was, well, there is a world where there could be some kind of, North American hub for WrestleMania weekend where you pick a city and maybe you just do a lower scale version. You don't have to go all out, but you pick a lower scale version where it's like in that city, you do a AAA show, you do Worlds Collide, and then maybe you do viewing parties at a big venue for WrestleMania day 1, not night 1, day 1 and day 2, and you have some superstars there and you make it, and you do WWE World. You have your WWE World convention happening there as well. Now, I don't know if that'll all be possible because most of the superstars may be over in Saudi Arabia, so maybe that's impossible, but maybe it's not. I don't know. That's just something that popped into my head. At the same time, maybe some of these peripheral events end up on SummerSlam. And maybe that's a good thing, right? WrestleMania has so much going on all at the same time. Like, I left WrestleMania this year going like, man, like the amount of people that stayed up till all hours of the night. Because now the way it works out now, you got SmackDown, then Hall of Fame after SmackDown, then NXT Stand and Deliver the next morning. So it's like you got people staying up till 3 o'clock in the morning, going to a wrestling show where the pre-show starts at 10 a.m. the next morning. It's crazy. So maybe there is a world where some of those events end up going over to SummerSlam weekend. And even if WrestleMania 44, 45, 40, like come back to the United States, you can still keep those events. You kind of spread out what you've got going on WrestleMania weekend into 2 of these weekends. And coming out of it, do you have people that now want to travel for SummerSlam and WrestleMania every year? If they're domestic, who's to say? And maybe when WrestleMania comes back to being domestic 44, 45, 46, SummerSlam can then become an international show. Who's to say? I don't know. But it could be either way. It's going to get very, very interesting. Things are going to change. Change is very difficult for all of us wrestling fans because we love our wrestling. We love our traditions. We love it all to be the same. But we'll manage. We'll get through it. We'll get through it together. The emergency podcast will be on earlier. That's one way to look at it. I think that's the headline. That's the way to look at it. That, like, for WrestleMania 43, the emergency post-WrestleMania podcast will be on earlier than they've ever been on. And that's a winning scenario for everybody, isn't it? I think that's a great thing. Before we get to emails, it's wild. We talked about AJ Styles. I think we put out a Notsam Wrestling update show about AJ Styles. So make sure that you're subscribed to the podcast feed. Make sure you're subscribed to the Notsam Wrestling YouTube channel. You're watching these update shows because I think we got into the AJ Styles thing. I don't know if we got into the Jey Uso thing or not. I know we did on Sirius XM. It's wild that so much has happened in the last couple of days that you don't even mention the fact that Cody Rhodes is back. Cody Rhodes returns at the end of that Randy Orton Drew McIntyre match. Now, I have a whole scenario planned for Cody Rhodes. And again, I put up a Notsam Wrestling update going over the whole scenario for Cody Rhodes, which you can get on the Notsam Wrestling podcast feed or on the Notsam Wrestling YouTube channel. We got NXT Homecoming. I'll put out a separate video just for NXT Homecoming. Maybe by the time you see this, that video is already out, now that I think about it. And so you got Cody Rhodes coming back. Cody Rhodes returns, pops up at the end of SmackDown, very similar to when he returned the last time. He returns after getting beat at WrestleMania. He's gone for a couple months. He returns at the very end of Saturday night's main event and says, me and you, Money in the Bank. That, he does the thing, wins the world title, away for a month because Drew McIntyre kicked his head through a commentary table, which is a good reason to be away for a month. Comes back, Drew, me and you, WrestlePalooza. So now we've got, that match to me is official. Cody Rhodes has made the challenge. We've got 5 matches now. We've got Cody Rhodes versus Drew McIntyre. We've got John Cena versus Brock Lesnar. We've got CM Punk and AJ Lee versus Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch. We've got Io Sky versus Stephanie Vaquer. Stephanie was not on Raw, but she was on NXT. And we've got John Cena versus Brock Lesnar. You could main event that show with Drew and Cody. You could main event. Oh, I'm sorry. No. I already said John Cena and Brock. The 5th match is the Usos getting back together against Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed. 3 out of the 5 matches you could main event that show with, no question. Joe Tess on ESPN said that John Cena and Brock Lesnar was going to be the main event. As it's, okay, I'll take Joe Tess's word for it. As far as I'm concerned, Joe Tess's word is gospel, but we'll see. Again, it depends on what these endings are going to be. There is a world in my mind where Drew McIntyre wins the WWE Championship. Not likely, but it's possible. If that were the case, I would think you would end the show with that. For me, AJ Lee pins Becky Lynch in that mixed tag match. I open the show with the mixed tag. 1,000%. I think AEW is going to run all out into the 7 p.m. hour, which is when this PLE is going to start. So I start with something that you're going to want people to turn on their ESPN app for, and that mixed tag is going to do it. Ending with John Cena versus Brock, it's big, but really on paper, I think the most likely results are all, the only matches that I'm not sure about are the non-main events, right? I'm pretty sure that CM Punk and AJ Lee are going to win. I'm pretty sure that Cody Rhodes is going to win, especially if it's not going on last. And, maybe something will happen on SmackDown. I forgot we have another SmackDown before then. I'm pretty sure John Cena is going to win, but maybe, I don't know. I don't know. And then I hope the Usos win, but I don't know what they're setting up for with Jey Uso. And I think Stephanie Vaquer should win the Women's World Championship. I absolutely think Stephanie should win. But we'll see. We'll see. Maybe we'll talk more about it as the week progresses. If you got any questions about any of this, feelings, concerns, thoughts, comments, you can leave them in the comments on YouTube. You can leave them in reviews on the podcast apps, be it Spotify or Apple, or you can email us, notsamwrestling@gmail.com. If you want to be part of our notorious weekly email segment, notsamwrestling@gmail.com is our email address. That's notsamwrestling@gmail.com. We start with Hamza, who's from England. Why did Brock come out on SmackDown saying he's looking for John Cena, even though last week John literally said that was his final SmackDown? You can't say Brock doesn't watch the show because he was at the show when John said it. Thanks, Hamza. I'm going to tell you right now. It's a very simple answer. Brock Lesnar doesn't follow rule number 1. What are the 3 rules of Not Sam Wrestling? I'll give you a hint. Number 2 is speculate wildly. Number 3 is everything counts. Number 1 is watch the product. Brock Lesnar does not watch the product. In my mind, the Brock Lesnar character, here's what happens. He showed up at the arena. He said, "Where's John Cena?" They said, "In the ring." He walked to the ring. He F5'd him. I don't think he was waiting for a cue. I don't think he heard him. That's why John Cena walked to the ring on SmackDown and asked R-Truth, "Where's John Cena?" He doesn't know if John Cena's booked or not. He doesn't talk to anybody. He just shows up at these buildings, says, "Where's John Cena?" Somebody tells him, or they don't, and then he goes and F5s either John Cena or whoever doesn't tell him. So based on what happened on SmackDown this week, last week, he said, "Where's John Cena?" They said, "In the ring." John Cena gets F5'd. This week, he says, "Where's John Cena?" R-Truth says, "I don't know." R-Truth gets F5'd. So it's very logical when you look at it that way. Let's go to Sam. Sam writing into Sam. "Hello, Mr. Roberts. I'm here to say that I acknowledge that you are not my original podcast tribal chief." What? You're my original podcast. Hi, Chief. Oh, thank you very much. Whoo, whoo, whoo. Okay, then I'll give you one of these. Whoo. 5, 2. I've recently watched some clips of you, and you're wearing some sick horror movie t-shirts. Do you have any favorite horror movies, any favorite horror wrestling moments, and what do you think is the common thread between both horror and wrestling that make those two genres of entertaining have such a large crossover? Well, I'll tell you. First of all, do you have any favorite horror movies? I have only favorite horror movies, okay? I love the movie Barbarian. I love Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I love the whole Friday the 13th franchise. I love some Halloween movies. I love Halloween Part 3, Season of the Witch. I watch horror movies all the time. I just watched a movie that was great called Dangerous Animals. You can see my review for it if you go over to the Not Sam YouTube channel. That's not wrestling. It's just Not Sam. I did a review for it there. And it's fantastic. As a matter of fact, I also reviewed the film Weapons over there, and I'll continue to do content like that over there if that's stuff that you're interested in. In terms of the crossover and horror moments, all the Fiend stuff. Just tickled my fancy like nothing ever has. Doink the Clown, the original evil Doink the Clown, who was clearly inspired by Pennywise from the original It. Tim Curry's It. That's the real It. Loved it. So yeah, I love it. And I think what makes the crossover there is that both horror and professional wrestling do not exist in a world where the laws of reality matter. People, if they don't get horror movies, they go, well, I don't understand. How come Jason exploded and then literally went to hell, and then the next thing you know, he's in a spaceship? Because it's fun, because it's cool. They go, I don't understand. How can that guy beat up that guy? That guy's way bigger. Because it's fun and because it's cool. In both horror and wrestling, if the story is good, we are willing to put the story over everything. We put it over physics. We put it over reality. We put it over everything. And so I think that to me is the main crossover, and I love it. Another listener from London, Avik, writes in, what would you rather see? Dominik and all the Americanos versus AJ Styles in the LWO Traditional Survivor Series, or AJ versus all the Americanos in a gauntlet? Every time he beats one, they get unmasked. I don't want to see them get unmasked. I'd rather, also they're going to look like losers if AJ just beats all of them. So I guess, 4-on-4, but I don't want to see AJ involved with the LWO and the Americanos anymore. I want to see him move on to the next thing. Dominik's already beat him twice. Let's go to Ashton from Sydney, who says, with the announcement of WrestleMania 43 being in Saudi Arabia, I want to know what your thoughts. Yeah, you got my thoughts, right? Has the potential to be the biggest WrestleMania of all time, biggest entryway. Yeah, that's true. No, you got my thoughts. Kyle writes in, I listened to your thoughts about Cody and WrestleMania. Why does WWE constantly need to recreate storylines of WrestleMania's past? Are you telling us Drew can't create a good story leading into a Mania match? I'm getting a little bit burned out on us having to turn every top guy to make Cody matches somewhat interesting. P.S. Good luck trying to explain WrestleMania 4. Well, I don't need to explain WrestleMania 43. I just break it down for you. But what do you mean? The reason, okay, so your argument is this feels very you're just in a space right now where maybe you've watched too much wrestling and you're burned out on everything, because these are very negative questions. Okay, the first thing is, why does I listened to your thoughts about Cody and WrestleMania. Why does WWE constantly need to recreate storylines of WrestleMania's past? They don't need to constantly. They don't. I don't even know what that means. What storylines are constantly being recreated? To be inspired by a great storyline of the past, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You should be inspired by great storylines of the past. And it allows you to give a wink and a nod to people that have been watching for decades, but still entertain people that are brand new to this. So I don't know what you mean by constantly, I don't know what the John Cena, the fact that if you're going back to WrestleMania 40 for that and say, why does WWE need to do this all the time? I don't know. Maybe because most of the people that watch it think it's the best WrestleMania finish that there ever was. Maybe that's something to do with it. But I don't think WWE does constantly recreate storylines of WrestleMania's past. But if a storyline is great, you're literally talking about a video that I made that was about the storyline from WrestleMania 3. You're talking about a storyline that is 39 years old. So you mean to tell me that you can't play upon, like, that worked then? Maybe we can kind of play with some of the roles in that story and do it now. We're not doing beat for beat, frame for frame. You're probably one of these guys that, why do they need to remake movies? I don't know, dude. And then, are you telling us Drew can't create a good story leading into a Mania match? No. First of all, the story that I told you was between Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton. All Drew McIntyre has done is told great stories leading into WrestleMania match. I'm telling you that it's guaranteed that Drew McIntyre could create a great story leading into a Mania match. But I'm also telling you that if you took the Andre Hogan story and used that story as the foundation for a Randy Orton, Cody Rhodes story, that would also be a great story. It doesn't negate anybody else. To say this would be a good story is not to say something else would not be a great story. That's a negative way to look at stuff. And then I'm getting a little burned out on us having to turn every top guy to make Cody matches somewhat interesting. Okay. Let's look at these Cody matches. Who are the guys? I mean, do you think are you talking about the John Cena turn? I don't know if this is constantly happening. I mean, because, like, Drew McIntyre is facing Cody Rhodes at the next PLE, and they didn't have to turn anybody for that. Drew McIntyre was already a heel. You talking about Logan Paul? Are you talking about, like, AJ Styles a year and a half ago? I mean, who exactly are you talking about? And if you do have to turn top guys to make Cody is a massive baby face. It's because when you have a baby face on the level of Cody Rhodes, that would be like saying, oh, why do you have to keep making unbeatable monsters for Hulk Hogan to face? I don't know. Maybe because Hulk Hogan is like the biggest baby face ever that conquers everybody, and that's the whole gimmick, and everybody loves him. So you have to keep making monsters so that people doubt it so you can tell these stories? Oh, why do you have to keep coming up with monsters for The Undertaker to wrestle? Because he's undead. What are you talking about? Let's go to another Sam. This is the top wrestling podcast for Sams. Hey, Sam, hope all is well. It's so good, you don't even know. He wrote that in parentheses, but he's 100% right. I mean, it's unbelievable right now. I had a stupid thought. I bet it's not stupid. I bet it's great. While enjoying SmackDown with some beverages. So hear me out. What if in a couple months down the road, after a few months of Sami Zayn's United States Open Invitational, Nick Aldis tells Sami he has an opponent from AAA that's going to challenge for the United States Championship, and it's a generic luchador with a build and moveset similar to a certain Olympian, and it could allow Ludwig to take full ownership of the El Grande mantle. Let's see. He has an opponent from AAA. Are you saying that, like, you have, like, just Ludwig Kaiser kind of hinting at that he's the new El Generico? I don't know. I mean, I'm not, there's nothing about that idea that annoys me, but I think, we can flesh it out a little bit. Ronald writes in, but, there's something there. Or, like, is it too inside to bring back Al Generico to face Ludwig Kaiser? I feel like you could do it on a AAA show. I don't know if you do it on the main roster, but the idea of El Generico facing Grande Americano on a AAA show, I'd like to think there's a way to get there. I'd like to think. Ronald writes in, what's up, my OPTC? What's up with you? Original, official, only podcast tribal chief. Obviously, everything counts. Two-time CM Punk has gone out of his way to say he's the type of guy that doesn't put his hands on women. Is there any chance at some point we see Seth hit AJ with a curb stomp? I don't know. Or is that something that WWE won't do due to the optics? I don't think it's due to the optics. I think it's like, I don't know. What kind of heel is Seth Rollins? I just don't think that it would add to the Seth Rollins character. I don't think it's in the Seth Rollins character. I think that the idea, like the idea of doing that, like when Baron Corbin hit the end of days on Becky Lynch, it was to be like, there is nothing redeeming about Baron Corbin. He's the lowest of the low, the worst of the worst. He's a scum. And I don't think that that's Seth Rollins' character. I think that Seth Rollins is a heel because he's motivated by power, but he can justify his own actions. I think that's a different thing than being like, I'm a heel because I'm the lowest of the low. If that's the direction Seth wants to go in, then yeah, but I just don't think. I don't think that the Seth Rollins character, I don't believe that the Seth Rollins character would go there. Let's see. That's long. Let's go to, okay, Chris. Hope all is well. Oh, it is. With Roman telling Jay to only trust people to him and Roman saying, telling Jay to only trust people to him and Roman saying he's only got a short time in wrestling before going into a less physical role. With how Jay has been in recent weeks, do you see Jay slowly turning away and turning into the tribal chief? Yeah. So if so, who do you think his wise man would be? Well, it's almost like, and we'll maybe get into this, and maybe I'll put out a video or podcast, I should say, about it later in the week. But I'm anxious to see what Jay does on Raw, because it's almost like Jay, in becoming a main eventer and becoming a world champion, is slowly becoming Roman Reigns, and not Roman Reigns now, the Roman Reigns who was like emotionally abusive to him. And I think that there's a lot there to unpack, and something that I probably like to do, clear the table and unpack it. But no, I see it. I think it's good. But I think his wise man would be Paul Heyman. And I think that would be this thing where it's like Roman hates Paul Heyman, but Jay's become Paul Heyman. And who would Roman turn to? Paul Heyman. So that's who Jay turns to. And now that's where friction starts between Jay and Roman Reigns. Like, you almost see Roman creating this monster and then having to deal with it somewhere down the line. And I know I'm saying a lot right now, and I'm cooking, but I think we'll unpack it as time goes on. All right, let's do 2 more emails, okay? OBTC 1. I understand. That's right. I understand that you don't think John Cena needs to win the Intercontinental Championship, and I agree, but it would be a great way to get Cena and Dominik to face each other like we all want. Imagine having Dominik come out during a Cena promo, holding up the one title that Cena has never won, even if it's just the one match, and the other Judgment Day or Americano get involved to secure a DQ, doing the same thing that Cena did to Sammy on his last SmackDown. I hope you and the family are doing well, and can I get a fat 2? You absolutely can. Fat 2! Here's where we can get a Cena-Dominik match. It would have to be like night of. I don't want a story, I should say. I should clarify by saying I don't want this to be one of Cena's stories. But let's say on Raw, this week on Raw, and if this happens, I hope you guys are listening to this on Monday. But this week on Raw, Cena comes out and says, he's doing his promo, and Dominik says, you've never won this title. And the main event of Raw is John Cena versus Dominik, and then Brock Lesnar interferes. Then I'm okay with it. But it would have to be one of those things where we establish that John Cena has never won the title, and then we main event that show. I don't want it to be a larger story, but if it were on that show, and I feel like Monday would be the night to do it, then yeah, I'm okay with it. Let's see. Okay. Let's see. Dear Sam, it's from Michael. Okay. Dear Sam, why do you only read the emails on your podcast that suck up to you as the podcast tribal chief? I've been listening to your show for over 10 years. You used to be cool. What happened to you, jerk? These are the emails that I get, dude. I mean, the overwhelming majority of the people are like, yeah, dude, you're the podcast tribal chief. I don't know what to tell you. Nothing happened to me. I'm the same. I'm better. I'm 10 years better than I was 10 years ago. But, I mean, nothing happened. I think something happened to you, you know? I am the podcast tribal chief. What do you want me to tell you? Sorry if that bothers you. I'm not going to end on that. Let's see. Um. Okay. Okay. No. That's a top 5 dead or alive. I'm not doing that. Okay. Jared writes in. Podcast Tribal Chief, for the rematch clause keyboard attorneys, where is Gunther's rematch? If not a world title pursuit, where do you see Gunther's character arc going? Gunther versus Brock, WrestleMania 42. No, it's a good question. And it's hard to say because I think Gunther versus Brock, WrestleMania 42 is a match that I want to see badly. I would love it if that's where it's going. I think it'll be a little bit more easy to determine once Gunther gets back. Rematch clauses are not guaranteed. Shane McMahon took those away years ago. So those don't exist anymore. I could see Gunther coming back as a babyface and going after Seth Rollins because he doesn't want the industry to turn I don't want the industry to turn into something like you with these ridiculous jackets on, these absurd boots that you wear. You know what I mean? I could see him not wanting that. So I could see him going after Seth as a babyface. But, I mean, it also depends on when he's getting back. If he'd be a great Rumble return. He'd be a great Rumble return. If we get Rumble returns from Gunther and Jericho in the same Rumble, that would be unbelievable. Gunther versus Jericho would be kind of fun. Who do you think you are? You know what I mean? Like Jericho trying to have fun and Gunther being like, you have no place on Mount Rushmore. You're not one of the greatest of all time. You're a joke. You're a has-been. Get out of my ring. Gunther versus Jericho would be great. If Jericho's coming back to WWE, I'd love to see Gunther versus Jericho. I don't think it's one people would expect. I think it would be a lot of fun. But, yeah, Gunther versus Brock at 42, I would love it. Keep emailing in. Let me know. NotSamWrestling@gmail.com. That's NotSamWrestling@gmail.com. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to all podcast audio feeds. And we'll get back to it throughout the week as we head in, to WrestlePalooza here on Not Sam Wrestling.